Is imposing a carbon tax on fossil fuels a market solution to climate change? Would simply outlawing the use of fossil fuels be a better course of action? Or could it be that if climate change is indeed a problem, the best solution would be simply to allow voluntary interactions in a free market? Stay tuned to find out. Hello everyone, this is My Two Cents. Dr. Richard Wolff recently made comments on the channel Democracy at Work, claiming that climate change, a dire threat to our society, cannot be stopped by the free market, and must be stopped through direct government intervention, the same way we stopped the wicked practice of child labor. As to be expected, virtually everything he says in this short clip is economically illiterate or historically inaccurate. Let's get into it.
Anyway, in response to his winning of the Nobel Prize, which he got, by the way, for studying climate change, global warming, and how to solve this climate problem, which he took seriously. His solution, indeed he said it was the only solution, was a market solution. Raise the price of institutions, companies that pollute the air, basically.
Alright, for those of you who would like to do some actual research on Dr. Nordhaus and what his position is, I'll link two articles, one from Forbes and one from Business Insider. But to sum it up, Dr. Nordhaus is an advocate of increased carbon taxes. In other words, he believes that the best way to cut carbon emissions is for the government to impose taxes on the use of fossil fuels, thereby raising the costs of fossil fuels and disincentivizing their use. However, I should point out that it is highly misleading to say this is a market solution. This would be the government using force to deliberately make fossil fuel prices more expensive and, by extension, make all the goods and services that are produced via the use of fossil fuels more expensive. In other words, the government should deliberately lower everyone's standard of living in order to reduce carbon emissions. As Dr. Robert Murphy has written, however, simply following the dollars around is not the full pain caused by our hypothetical carbon tax. Everybody suffers from a lower standard of living. For example, with a $100 per ton carbon tax, according to this online calculator, gasoline prices rise 44%, natural gas prices rise 124%, and home heating fuel rises 56%. And if we consider coal prices, they would rise a whopping 660%. Which would, of course, completely knock out coal as a viable energy source, even though it currently provides almost 30% of US electricity. And these obvious jumps in fuel prices, which are calculated based on the chemistry of their carbon content, would spill over into everything you buy. Imagine how much more it will cost to have goods shipped via Amazon, or how much more fruit in the store would cost when gas and diesel prices rise so much. Simply put, deliberately lowering everyone's standard of living in the name of reduced carbon emissions is not a solution. If what politicians want is a new, more environmentally friendly fuel source, their best bet is to cut taxes and regulations that increase the cost of doing business and discourage entrepreneurship. This would result in freed up capital, which could then be put towards research and development that may well result in cheaper, more environmentally friendly fuel systems. If you want new technological solutions to climate change that don't force us to go back to living in the Stone Age, then you shouldn't rob people of resources that could be used to create such solutions. I challenge anyone to give me just one example historically where increased taxes or government regulation resulted in both a better environment and a higher standard of living. Why is it that the higher standard of living and higher environmental score correlate with the more economically free a country is?
Well, I've always found this extraordinary. You raise the price. That means people who have to buy these things are going to be hurt. What an interesting way of solving a problem, hurting large numbers of people.
Wow! For once, I actually agree with something Richard Wolff said. He is absolutely right. Raising the prices of fuel and therefore increasing the prices of every good and service that relies on the use of fuel will absolutely hurt everyone by lowering everyone's standard of living.
Wouldn't it be easier just to outlaw the practice? Why this playing around with markets? And to tell us that the market solution is the only solution? That's straight out wrong.
Wait, what? You just said that raising prices for everyone hurts people. So why not instead just outlaw the practice of using fossil fuels? Are you insane, Dr. Wolff? You admit that raising the cost of gasoline hurts everyone and then suggest why not just outlaw gasoline? If you can't see the problem in your logic here, then I'm afraid there's no help for you.
Let me give you a couple of examples. 100 years ago, one of the great horrors of capitalism was child labor.
This is an outright lie. Capitalism did not give us child labor. Child labor for millennia was the result of scarcity. People needed food, water, shelter, and under the current economic conditions, if you wanted to feed your family, you couldn't afford to simply let your children play all day. If they wanted to eat, they needed to help in the fields, or hunting, or whatever the relevant task may have been. Child labor only began to disappear because of innovations that brought about increased efficiency of production and allowed a smaller number of workers to produce the same amount of goods and services as before. Once less labor was required to produce the goods and services everyone wanted, parents could afford to send their children to school because they didn't actually need their children's revenue in order to survive. As author Jeffrey A. Tucker writes, by the time this legislation, by which he refers to child labor laws, passed, however, it was mostly a symbol, a classic case of Washington chasing a trend in order to take credit for it. Youth labor was expected in the 17th and 18th centuries, even welcome, since remunerative work opportunities were newly present. But as prosperity grew with the advance of commerce, more kids left the workforce. By 1930, only 6.4% of kids between the ages of 10 and 15 were actually employed, and 3 out of 4 of those were in agriculture. In other words, it was the free market that ended child labor, and the government sneakily tried to take credit for it by passing child labor laws after the fact. However, as author Thomas de Gregori has noted, when underdeveloped countries like Bangladesh do put an end to child labor as a result of public pressure and not increased economic prosperity, the result is children having no choice but to resort to crime and prostitution to survive. Is that really favorable compared to them working a manual labor job?
The practice of capitalists to lower the wages they had to pay, to hire children as young as 5 and 6 years of age, pay them very little, and stick them in place of adults who would have had to be paid more.
Again, that is not what happened. Prior to modern technological advancements, children worked out of necessity, not due to any evil capitalist greed. But I should also point out that all this talk of greedy corporations trying to find workers willing to accept lower wages ignores the fact that wages themselves are not what is relevant, but rather the purchasing power of those wages. When businesses pay lower wages, they can afford to charge less for their products, which results in increased purchasing power in the economy overall.
And of course, these children were lost in terms of their schooling, which they lost, in terms of their childhood, which they lost. It was thought to be a horror.
Yeah, that's all garbage that's been documented to be false. Check out the sources that will be linked in this video's corresponding blog post if you'd like to learn more.
Now, of course, a market solution might have been to raise the wages that had to be paid to children, and there were some efforts to do that. But thankfully, American families rose to the occasion and said, no market solution. Cut. None of it. Make it a crime to hire children. Guess what? Solved the problem. And it didn't have to do it by a market, which would have been difficult and slow. Market solution? Nah, not advisable here.
Do you have any citations for these supposed facts, Dr. Wolff? I challenge you to provide one, just one, example where the government fixed a dire problem through the use of force. I contend that an honest examination of history will show us that in such cases, the government either made matters worse, or simply tried to take credit for a solution that had resulted from the free market after the fact. Richard Wolff is yet another example of how whenever statists try and claim that the free market cannot solve a particular problem, they inevitably end up demonstrating that the free market is the best chance of solving that problem. What do you guys think, though? Is there something I've missed in my assessment? Be sure to comment, like, share, and subscribe. And if you're able, please consider supporting this channel on Subscribestar, Bitbacker, or Patreon. The links to all three can be found on this video's corresponding blog post linked in a pinned comment below. And that is my 2 cents. Take it for what it's worth. Thanks everyone for watching. If you liked this video, please hit like, subscribe, and hit the bell to receive notifications of new uploads. And if you're a fan of my channel, please consider supporting me on Subscribestar, Bitbacker, or Patreon. For as low as $1 a month, you'll receive access to patron-exclusive videos, earn the right to participate in patrons-only live streams, join my patrons group chat on Twitter and Discord, and numerous other rewards. Also, be sure to subscribe to my gaming channel for a chance to hang out and chat during gaming streams. Uploads are every Thursday and Saturday, so stay tuned for more videos.